want to do is just share with you 10 potentiator practices that we've identified at Environics as being the hallmark of those people who activate ultimate success. And I love that word activate. It's not achieve, because achieve seems to imply that you've come on a long journey and eventually you achieve it. Activate means from the get-go, you start to make something happen. And by the way, there's always a lag time. You don't plant a seed at 3 o'clock and then harvest it at 4 o'clock. But you do start to activate the germination of that seed the moment you put it into the soil. So this is about how to activate ultimate success, and ultimate success means whatever success means to you by helping others function at their best. So look, one of the reasons I'm so motivated is that I attend all my own seminars. No, I'm serious. I'm always talking to myself, and you're always talking to yourself. But I'm a motivator because I'm not doing this for the money. I'm going to take Karen's money. I'm not doing it for the money. And you and I both know that the best professionals are amateurs. Amateur comes from the Latin word amatore, which means love. So I'm doing this because I really will love it if when you leave here, there's one thing I've shared with you that enables you to achieve one thing you otherwise wouldn't have achieved if you didn't come to the session. So I want to walk you through these 10 potentiator practices, and then I'll also allow just a couple minutes for any dialogue if there is any. So the first is be self-savvy. And by the way, I don't know who Savvy Investor is. Who's Savvy Investor? Karen?
That's a publication.
Oh, that's just a publication, all right? So whoever represents Savvy Investors read my book, because you'll see my very first principle is be self-savvy. Not just self-aware. Self-aware means that you are aware of what's going on around you, you're aware of what you're doing. But when you're self-savvy, you understand what your own principles are, you discern your impact on other people, and you play the role that you need to play. So one of the immediate actions you want to take as a result of this talk is you want to discern and define what your core principles are. Because no matter what investment you represent, the number one question on people's mind is, who are you? What defines you? What's your code? Can I trust that code? Do I want to be engaged with that code? So what are your principles? And you want to understand the impact you're having on others, and then importantly, what's the role you're playing in their lives? So I'm not always like this, right? When I'm at home, I'm a shy, retiring introvert who's barely tolerated by my dogs. In fact, the main reason I'm really tolerated is I'm a, life system attached to a wallet. I fund everybody else's lifestyle, which I'm very happy to do. My point is that I'm not always like this. I'm playing the role of Mr. Motivator for the short time that I have in front of you. We're all playing a role in other people's lives. We need to understand what that role is and then play it to perfection. Number two, you want to develop, and this is why we're all here today, situational sensibility. What does that mean? It means you become acutely aware of your environment, of the situation in which you are in. And that's why, and I want to compliment all of you, you are here physically. You've got out there. You're meeting like-minded people who are going to share their perspective with you. That's going to enrich your ability to interpret what's going on around you. This is why this is not happening through streaming video. There's no substitute for face-to-face communication. How many of you have noticed that people who spend too much time by themselves are strange? Right? And ultimately, especially in your world, as Stephen King says, everything old is new again. It's about bespoke, it's about personal, and it's about enabling other people to understand what they otherwise could not have understood. So it's about getting out there, knowing the trends, and being able to connect the dots. You know what amazes me? I travel the length and breadth of this continent. I see two people confronted with exactly the same situation. One of them becomes mega excited because they've identified the dots, they've already begun to connect the dots, and then they start to project the dots. And the other person is panic-stricken because they haven't even seen the dots in the first place. So it's about identify the dots, connect the dots, project the dots. Because when you're talking to someone, like I'm talking to you now, there are three questions that you're asking yourself. The first question you're asking yourself is, what's really going on? how is what this individual is saying relating to what's going on in my life? Number two, what's going to happen? All of us in this room are really people who carry around this mythical crystal ball, right? So when we listen to Dave, he admits that he hasn't always got it right. But when I went down in the elevator with him, he says, hey, you make it to the Baseball Hall of Fame with a .250 batting average. 1 out of 4 ain't bad. So people are asking, what's going on? What's going to happen? And then the third thing is, what should I do about it? And that's where you have to share a narrative that convinces people they should do something about it. Now, in the spirit of full disclosure, I will tell you that I'm often wrong, but I'm never in doubt. I know how many alpha individuals there are in this room. I know that if I wasn't talking to you with this degree of conviction, you wouldn't be listening. So whether you agree with what I'm saying is not important to me. What is important to me is that you believe that I believe. And oftentimes, I've had people present things to me, and I'm looking at them and I'm saying, who are you kidding? You don't even believe that. And it really helps if you're a student of the trends. Let's look at number 3. Now, 3 is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you make your powerful promise. Many of us may have been raised in an environment that says under-promise and over-deliver. That's not my MO. My MO is make a big promise and then deliver it. And sometimes I'll make a big promise that I don't know how I'm going to deliver against it, but I'm going to deliver against it. And by the way, all of us in this room have got a fear that spikes us into wakefulness at 2 a.m. in the morning. You know what that fear is? That something's going to come up sooner rather than later that we will never have had to deal with before, and we won't know how to deal with it. How many of you are a little concerned about having to deal with a crisis that is unprecedented? Yeah, if you're not raising your hand, you don't know what's going on. Right? Now, I'm going to give you 3 words. Figure it out. Find a way or make a way to figure it out. Not by yourself, but with other people. So you and I want to make big promises. That's why you're in this room. Because you're going to offer me a superior return, and sometimes you're going to have to really stretch to make those promises. But integrity is not making a promise that you know exactly how to deliver against. Integrity is making a big promise and then delivering against that, finding a way or making a way. So when you make a big promise, the first thing you got to do is declare your purpose. Let people know what you stand for. So I'm in the business of exciting people into action. That's my mission. Then you want to express your unique value proposition. Mine is very simple. I'm going to turn you into a potentiator, right? And then finally, you want to be focused on your execution. We're living in a swirl of distraction, which is why, by the way, when I give a talk like this, I like just to have a card so that you focused on what I'm saying, you focus on my delivery, you focus on your thoughts, you're not focused on a series of moving images behind me. Let's look at 4. Now, there's no shortcut to 4. There's no lazy way to 4. But you want to be so skilled that people brand you as being sublimely skilled, irrespective of the level that you are at. So if I'm working with an intern, I want an intern to be sublimely skilled at the level of an intern. If I'm working with a chief executive officer, I want that individual to be sublimely skilled at the level that they at. If I'm being operated on by a surgeon, I definitely want that surgeon to be sublimely skilled. But you want to be so effective, or as a colleague of mine says, so efficacious, that people are thinking to themselves how skilled you are. And have you noticed, when people can talk with that degree of artistry, that degree of genius, spelt with a G, not a J, then other people get entranced. And we say to ourselves, I want to hang with that person because they are the ones who really know. And what our research says is we're living in an age where people are terrified of fake news and making important decisions based on fraudulent information. So being sublimely skilled is critical. So practice for real. As the great Kawhi Leonard said, the 82 games in regular season are just 82 practices for what's happening right now. And thank God for the Raptors. Because I used to be a believer, and I've lost that, but that's the way it goes. So you want to become the authority, and then, 4C is critical. You want to make it a pleasure. People have got to look forward to meetings with you. There's some people I work with who are extraordinary, but it's really hard to be with them. I tolerate them because they're so magnificent. But when I leave those meetings, man, I'm ground down. Just remember this, there's only two kinds of people in all our lives, those with whom we want to hang and those with whom we have to hang. Who are you, right? Number 5, well, we all understand 5. You've got to be robustly resilient. You know, I love that word robust because it means strongly healthy. It means you can take that licking and keep on ticking. And resilience, by the way, is defined by the dictionary as the ability to spring back to your original form after being bent or compressed. No, seriously, there are a whole lot of people with whom I work, especially in this game, who get burnt out. And then they cross a certain threshold and somehow they lose their mojo. They lose their joie de vivre. And this is why the infographic we have against 5 is the infographic of a surfer. You know, when you watch surfers out there, it's hard work, but it's thrilling when they catch the wave, but they've got to be out there for hours pursuing hundreds of waves to catch the one. And they've got to have the stamina and the resilience to be able to hang in there to catch the one. So 3 points there. Number 1, you want to interpret to win. One of the most important things I can share with you this afternoon is you want to tell yourself great stories. Because we're only as happy as the stories we tell ourselves. So I'm looking at Michael staring back at me, and the story I'm telling myself is that I'm inspiring him to be even better than he was going to be without my talk. Right? Am I right? Yeah. And I'm looking at the rest of you staring back at me, and I'm interpreting your expressions as awe and wonder. Now, I could also misinterpret your expressions and say, whoa, I'm not getting through, or I'm seeing some skeptics out there. I think I might be missing the mark. So you want to tell yourself great stories that are related to reality. So I'm like one of those Hollywood movies that come on and says, based on a true story. So this is not the facts, but it's based on the facts. And by telling my story, I want to get you into the right state of mind. You want to be prolific, you want to do a lot of things, and you know, 5C is key. There's no substitute for 5C. You want to train like an athlete, because we're all athletes in the game of life. Enough said about that. 6, you want to grow, and it is growth, courageous creativity. Creativity is defined as inventiveness, as ingenuity, as entrepreneurialism, but you need courage to go where you've never been before. And the one thing I will say to you is that people who don't experience fear are stupid. Because fear is simply respect for what's going on around you. And anything creative means you've got to go up against the status quo. And by the way, people around you are depending on you to be their source of courage. Like, I know it's much easier for me to be courageous when I've got outstanding, courageous people with me in my foxhole. So 3 things. You want to unleash your imagination. One action I'd ask you to take, beginning this afternoon, beginning tomorrow, is just do one thing you've never done before. Say one thing you've never said before. You know, wear a color tie that you've never worn before. Do something that helps you unleash your imagination, and then keep making deposits on that Unleash the Imagination account. Experiment like Edison. You know, Edison said, it's not an experiment if you know how it's going to turn out. All right, so if you're going to experiment, well, then sometimes you might not get the desired result. But as I tell people, I never fail. Sometimes I just encounter unexpected consequences. And I never get rejected. Sometimes I just meet people who temporarily cannot appreciate quality. And then you want to do what we're all doing here, talk, listen, and learn. Right? Not necessarily in that order. Number 7, and this is my favorite one, is when someone is fanatically faith-worthy. You know, there's certain people in my life that I know if they say it, it's going to happen. They are fanatic about following through. And then there are other people who, when they say it's going to happen, I go, 20% chance. And some people, when they say it's going to happen, I go, no, that's never going to happen. And then there's some people I go, yeah, you know, more likely than not it's going to happen. But luckily, I've got people in my life that when they say it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So your word is not just your bond, your word is you. You know, there's a Nobel Prize winner called Desmond Tutu who won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work in a post-apartheid South Africa. And what he said is words don't just describe a situation, words define a situation. So if you say it, do it, and when you do it, let people know how fanatic you are about following through. So commit to your commitments, come through in the crunch, and 7C's key here. Be the best you can be every day. So, look, I don't know if I'm being the best I can ever be this afternoon, but I am being the best I can be this afternoon. So you want to just remind yourself in every situation to be the best you can be that day and hold yourself to that standard, because every day is our life in miniature. Think about that. Number 8, create close connections. In your world and mine, we're only as good as the intimacy of the relationships that we build. And so when I'm pitching a client or I'm pitching an account, I know I'm doing well when I start to hear the word we. So it starts off with, what are you going to do? You know, this is where we are coming from. And then what happens is the other person opens their arms and they go, well, what do you think we should do about it? And they have invited me into their inner circle, and I become what's known as an outsider insider. So how do you create close connections? Number 1, give first. Educate first, then sell. Let people know what you can bring them. Deliver the value, and the response will follow. Open yourself up. You know, there are a lot of us who really, afraid of being vulnerable. But I know that in the age of Google, in the age of algorithms, people are going to find out. Let them in. Don't be too concerned about creating this extreme buffer zone around you, because the more people know about you, the more relaxed they can be with you. And what I know is this: if I make a client or a prospect my friend, I'm far more likely to build that relationship with them. I'm far more likely to build the trust. I'm far more likely to hear things that my competitors would not hear. And then, as I say, become an insider. What does it mean to become an insider? It's to find out things that only insiders know. And you want to demonstrate that you're an insider. So if I'm working with clients, I'm going to be talking to my network in that organization, and whoever my client is, I'm going to let them know that I know things that only insiders know. And that's the importance of networking, just like you're doing here today. All right, number 9. Hopefully you'll agree with me that I'm communicating like a champion. Do you agree with me? This is where you need to be generous and say yes. Okay, thank you. But look, I'm saying it like I mean it. I'm talking with my style. Now, some of you might be a little more understated than me. Henry, you might be a little more understated than me. Definitely, right? Don't say it with such conviction, right? If I had your hair, I wouldn't have to be like this. That's what happens when you sit in front, Henry. No, seriously, when you meet Henry, you've just got you've got a face full of drama, man. I mean, I would want to hear the story that you tell. It's a good one. Okay, he's said it all. So my point is this: I'm being true to me. This is my style. This is my brand. What's your brand? And how do you say it like you mean it? Because your words and the way you say your words have got to be congruent. B, talk the other person's language. So throughout my entire delivery today, I've spoken the language of investment, spoken your language. And whenever I'm with people, I listen very carefully to the words that they use. Henry, what's your favorite word, would you say? Sensational. Sensational. Now, if I was with Henry, that would be every 4th word. And then look, 9C is the most important thing I can share with you, and that is you want to connect other people to their purpose. How many of you have noticed that the most motivated people in any organization are the rookies? You know why? Because they don't know that it cannot be done. They've got a very poorly developed sense of the odds against them. They've bought into the vision. They believe, and then they have something called beginner's luck. But then what happens is they get fatigued, or they hit the wall, or they become cynical, or they become tired, or they plateau, and they forget why they started in the first place. If you're a great communicator, people start to remember what turned them on, what lit them up, and then you light them up so they can go and be extraordinary. And then finally, look, it all comes down to 10. If you don't achieve 10, then the first 9 steps have been in vain. And 10 is where you cause the bold breakthrough. You bring out the new investment. You generate the extraordinary results. You build the buzz. You get people to believe. You really excite, thrill, and amaze and stun people into a new way of thinking. That's what I brand as a bold breakthrough. That's the aspiration we're all pursuing simply by being here. So 3 points. Number 1, own it. Truly own it. I go into so many organizations where they talk about being accountable. Nobody wants to be accountable. That's like really intense pressure without the upside. right? But when you own it, now you've got skin in the game. And what I want to know is whoever I'm talking to, I want to know how much skin have they got in the game. Because people who don't have skin in the game don't bring everything to the game. Celebrate the struggle. If you're in this room, I know you've been through some really challenging times. And I used to think it shouldn't be this hard. How many of you have ever had some of those days? It shouldn't be this excruciating. Yes, it should. Because the struggle is what makes you great, what makes it worthwhile. So now, when I'm going through those moments of anguish or pain, I go, it's just the way it's meant to be. Someone said to me, walls are simply there to keep uncommitted people out. Right? And then finally, flap. Whatever happens, flap. You know what that means? Finish like a pro. Make sure that your last step is your strongest, is your best step. So all I want to say to you is, my name is Mike Lipkin, and I approve this message.